having the heaviness of the systemic racism in mind, thought it would be really great to have to offer a way that connects building energy projects with building people power and solidarity. And before I begin, I would like to just kind of get a temperature of the room here by asking you to answer one poll answer here. You're about to see on your screen popping up. And if you can just, there's no right or wrong answer. I just want to kind of get a temperature check of where we're at. I know we have someone who's calling on the phone, but the question here is, what do you think is the core issue we need to address with the climate emergency? I know it's not either or, but like if you have to choose one, do you think it's climate and earth science? Do you think it's social science and how we treat each other? I'm just see it rolling in. If you could just click it, don't think too hard. There's no right or wrong answer. Just wanted to get a feel of the room here. We have 4 more voting. And by the way, this is anonymous, so there's no judgment. Any final, okay, I think nobody is getting the last vote in. I will close the poll. And we're 50-50 split, how fun. Here, you can see the result here. I believe that I'm having a feeling, I'm seeing a lot of my old colleagues from my Suntech days. Hello, friends, so great to see you all. So I'm gonna guess that, hi, Jeff, long time. I'm going to guess probably a lot of people are in here without the experience to watch the last Salon series that the Climate Reality Project in Bay Area chapter was hosting about cultural mindfulness. But I would really encourage you all to take a listen to the talk. It's very simple and it's just really powerful. Jeremy was talking about, he includes an overview of the modern cultural pattern that separates us from each other, our food, our environment, so we can be convinced that technology is a solution, like how we're also glued to the phone, even though the technology gets us more connected than ever, but we don't even know where our food comes from. We have no connection to our environment that we live in and the water that we drink. So it becomes a lot more and more difficult as we're getting more and more separate from the very fabric of life that we're connected to. And the truth is, if we're all connected in the right way with each other and show up in solidarity with each other, we actually become the solution using technology as a tool instead of relying on our current connection with each other. I mean, like right now, look at it. It is 2020 and we still find ourselves asking each other, why are we more divided than we can ever remember? And why can't we just love each other? I know a lot of my friends ask that question a lot, and I also understand that within the climate movement, we talk about inclusivity and equity a lot, and it's something that is really around something that's within climate emergency. I want to just kind of address that, and I will start with my share screen. You should be able to see my screen now. So to begin this presentation, I just wanted to start with a cartoon about equity. And we need to start by recognizing the system of oppression experienced daily by Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities that Taryn was talking about. And because if we cannot even admit the reality, as you can see on the screen, and the wrong that was done in the past, we'll never be able to come together. Started with colonization. For centuries, the Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities have been murdered, silenced, and ignored to serve the extraction of wealth by a small number of people. And I say this not to put any guilt on any race, but simply to name the uncomfortable truth. It's a truth that we're literally experiencing right now with our society, with so much unrest in this country, so we can actually move forward together. And so today I am honored to share with you how we are weaving the web to reconnect and to use Jeremy's word, transform our ecological civilization from a wealth-based civilization to a life-based civilization. And also important to recognize that the same mentality that was okay and normalized with the idea of wiping out the whole population of Indigenous people, it's a very same mentality that is okay to sacrifice some people or kill our planet for the sake of saving the economy. I mean, that decision was literally in the front line of our many papers back in March and April, when the politicians are talking about whether we should sacrifice the people to save the economy. And that type of mentality literally roots all the way back from colonization. And unless we can change the state of mind from exclusionary to inclusionary, just by the fact that the privilege has prospered from the history and not recognized the past, we'll never be able to move forward with those who have continuously been wronged and extracted from, because we will continue to cause the harm of oppression by following the current structure that most of us are so privileged to not have to even be remotely aware of in our own lives, myself included. And simply because we are unaware of other people's lived experience under that oppression, until smartphone footage begins to capture the reality of these people. And hence we have this outroar from the society right now. And when the structure is built on racism, the aftermath effect will inherently be racist unless we do something about it and actively try to dismantle it. Strategies to build solutions that are blind to the reality of racism can become racist even with the best intention. So since we're not doing this in person, I would like to just describe a game with you called the Privilege Walk. Many of you might have already heard this game before. So the game goes like this. Everyone starts on the same line like you see on this photo. The facilitator will read a statement and you will move backwards or forward one step accordingly. Something like, if your parents work nights and weekends to support your family, take one step back. If you can show affection for your romantic partner in public without fear of ridicule or violence, take one step forward. And I hope you can just kind of mentally do it in your brain too. Or like, if you grew up with more than 50 books in your house, take one step forward. Just kind of just separating, just really understand the difference in privilege. It's a lot more than just money and our skin color, but really our lived experience. So if you get time off for your religious holiday is also another big step forward too in terms of privilege. And if you have ever been bullied or made fun of based on something that you can't change, you take one step back. Or if your ancestor came from this land, not by choice, take one step back. So by the end of this game, you can see how the room spreads out by the level of privilege people have. It's an incredibly uncomfortable exercise, especially most of the time. It ends with a facilitator asking you to come and grab $1 from their hands. Obviously, the one at the very front gets to have everything and win, and the ones at the very back won't even try to get it. And that's the reality right now. With the culture of separation, where we're so focused on taking care of ourselves that we forget how to take care of each other. So, but I would really like to offer a different interpretation of this privilege walk, which is something that I rarely hear about. And that's the same narrative that we hear when we talk about privilege. And that is to take a moment and observe at the end of this exercise, who can see the most in the room? Who can really see what's going on in the room? The people in the very back get to see everything in the room with the widest vantage point. And those in the very, very front simply has a wall in their face, despite the fact that they have the most power to change the course of lives of everyone in the room. So if we can really build a line of solidarity across the room and break free from the construct that the front is the best or the back is not good, then we'll be able to trust and love each other and actually start to work together and move forward for our entire civilization. We cannot address climate solutions without addressing power and privilege. And that's where I'm here to really talk about and how we can actually structure energy project to address that. Because frankly, until we can figure out how to bring the benefit of transition of climate solutions to everyone, the transition will never happen. And we have a clock in front of us, and we need collective community action to get us out of this climate crisis. But what is required is a culture where we can show up in solidarity with each other. So I'm gonna give you some example of things that we're all so familiar with in the climate solution space. Let's take a look at energy efficiency in a culture of separation, which in many ways we are living in. In the state of California, we have one of the best energy efficiency programs in the country with lots of great incentives. A lot of these energy efficiency programs are practically free even for renters, but for whatever reason, low-income communities just won't tap into it. And a lot of industry experts are scratching their heads trying to figure out how can we get into this hard to reach communities. And there are 4 stages into these problems. Like if you're someone in the low income communities, you tend to start with number 1. I don't have time to pay attention to what you are saying. When you're coming to knock on my door or to call me, I don't have time. I'm working 2, 3 jobs just to survive. And 2, even if I have time to listen to you, I don't trust you. I live in a communities where it's tend to be a target of predatory lending. There's no free lunch. And so I don't want to believe in anything you're saying. Please go away. And even if, let's just say that you're able to get to me, you get me to trust you, and that you're able to convince me that you're not taking advantage of me to get me to sign on to some loan that I become in debt to you for X number of years. Here's some inherent issue with many members of the frontline communities who are experiencing the extraction and the pain of the current system. It is actually not incredibly rare to have 16 people living in a 2-bedroom household in the Bay Area, believe it or not. And that's like a big issue for shelter in place. And for a lot of people who are privileged, they don't understand that reality. And it's also even more common to have parts of the house that could trigger fear of getting arrested because of illegal building or permit issues, or just fear of strangers coming to the house. And what about undocumented immigrants who are simply not legally protected? They just cannot trust people coming in. So if we're talking about energy efficiency and trying to tackle negawatt, how can we actually get people to feel safe and participate? And let's just say that we're not talking about undocumented immigrants. We're not talking about like these ultra low income people. The next question is then, when we're doing home energy upgrade, you in some way improve the quality of your home, which in many ways increases the rent for the house, which leads to displacement. And that is the biggest problem in the Bay Area for the members of the community. So when survival is at stake, people will not participate. And so how can we design energy efficiency program to make sure that we are not going to threaten the survival of people's livelihood and even lives? And the next example about electrification, I know Climate Reality Project is really big on electrification. Well, let's take a look at electrification in a culture of separation. People with privilege of time, social network, and resources, they can work to push for electrification because climate emergency and we need to decarbonize as fast as possible, but completely ignoring the voices of those who don't have any of those privilege. Those people who work 2, 3 jobs and can still barely pay rent or pay all of their bills. And as a climate activist myself, I would just say that I'm ashamed to admit that during the public safety power shutoff, I was happy to have natural gas, to still have hot water and the ability to cook. So what about the people who need it more than I do? How do we weave resiliency into the conversation of electrification? And what's more, people who face police brutality or risk of harassment from ICE are concerned about the lives with electrification and lack of data privacy from corporation and government, especially when we're introducing smart homes and all these cool gadgets. And that similar to the testing program for tracking for COVID-19, that's a huge issue and concerns that communities and the front lines are having if the government ends up deciding to roll out the program and track people where they're going, whether they're tested for COVID-19 or not. Data privacy becomes an issue for communities' ability to make sure that they can survive and not get killed by the police or the oppression that is in our system. And then talking about solar, the California Energy Commission's groundbreaking low-income barrier study reveals several key barriers for us today here, that about half of Californians, more than 15 million households, mostly renters and low-income individuals, cannot own solar because of barriers presented by their credit, capital, or building. This is compounded by a lack of policy or business model that serves them. And 50% of them cannot participate in the energy transition. Think about this. If we need everyone to move as fast as we can, we need to open this up to allow anyone to be able to involve in the creation of energy projects, renewable energy projects. And this is about activation, education of future climate leaders by being involved in building energy project. So there's a lot of the narrative around solar has really been used kind of just be a subsidy for the rich people and the poor people. It's really hurting the under-resourced community. In fact, there's a secretive group that's currently, it's linked to a monopoly utility interest that is launching an attack on our solar right now. I'm sure a lot of people know at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission level to try to kill net metering using that exact narrative. So how can we make sure that while we're in the middle of this urgent fight, that we're able to work together and not allow the opposition to pit us against each other? There's so much more to say, including carbon tax and about how it's only exacerbating the livelihood of the communities who live in the quote sacrifice zone. So how can we actually make sure we can look at these solutions with the mind of building a line of solidarity instead of using the culture of separation to build these climate solutions? So going back to the cartoon, I know you've been looking at this long enough. All of these barriers to equity may seem daunting and tiring because all we want to do is just deal with this earth science and climate science. But I just want to, this is a reminder of why building the line of solidarity really matters, and how without doing equity the right way, we'll never have a real transition as people fight to protect their lives and livelihood to survive. People will stand up to survive against any quote unquote solution that would threaten their lives. So when their ability to participate is completely stripped away from them, we'll never have a real transition without recognizing and working on our own privilege and power within the line of solidarity with each other, so then we can really recognize what the reality looks like. And to get there, we just have to ask ourselves with this photo, why is there a fence to begin with, right? So if we all work together and get rid of the fence, instead of trying to figure out who gets to have the box to stand on, we can really liberate all of us and get to work. So I'm here to really just offer that solidarity, and when I'm talking about line of solidarity, it really is about co-liberation. How do we liberate all the people so that not only can they survive, they can also participate in a way of life in which they have been struggling to hold on to because of the history of colonization. So we need to show up for each other and embrace the diversity that is who we are in this planet, and have the uncomfortable conversation around what privilege means and what power means and how we can all show up for each other. It's a vision that we really have to create together to overcome fear, so we can start sharing and working together with the people all the way from the very back of the room who can see the reality, so that our power is not going to cause us to drive off the cliff, but we can actually use a vision from the people in the back, from the privilege walk, to really navigate our fight against climate change and get us out as a civilization. So the cultural piece is really important. And I think it's really important for us to really think about how we're really showing up in solidarity and co-liberation with each other. I would like to get into, just since we're talking about community, to kind of get you to get to know each other, but I want to pause real quick. I know what I said could be potentially provocative, so I want to check and make sure that we're still together here. Is there any burning questions that we might have about what I talked about? Amelia, do you see any?
None in the chat. Yeah, and people aren't scared.
Oh, welcome back.
Hey.
Thank you.
Good work.
Hello, welcome back. We were able to meet some new friends, and let's get a little sense of togetherness. If you could kind of share in chat about your answer, your new answer, or your new friend's answer, to just kind of, I'm interested because I didn't have the privilege of being in the room with y'all to hear about that, your feeling about the concept of co-liberation. And while we're doing it, without further ado, we'll talk about what exactly People Power Solar Cooperative does. We address the issue by tapping into the long-running tradition of cooperatives, which is a hybrid social enterprise entity similar to a credit union or REI or like a food co-op, legally structured for the mutual benefit of its member. And I'm about to play a 3-minute video, and we maybe ground ourselves into the vision.
Big wink.
Okay.
Really like your Supergirl.
As of this moment, I am getting my energy and electricity from the sun. And this will be the first community-owned solar panel, cooperatively owned solar panel on a residential roof in all of California.
We are moving into a world where fossil fuel no longer should drive us, and we're all looking for solutions on how to shift that. And we're thinking about how do we put this solar back into the power of the people and not the big company.
So People Power Solar Cooperative is a business model innovation that enables everyday people to come together and make decisions collectively and build shared wealth. This is an opportunity for the 99% to participate in wealth building. And it's people that are driving this. This is the solution we need.
We go fast alone, we go far together. How far do you want to go?
And we'll dive deeper into the detail of what exactly we do. But due to the limitation of time, I'll only be able to kind of scratch the surface of how People Power Solar Cooperative works. But I would encourage you all to stay after the top of the hour to dive deeper if you'd like to. And before I get in there, I think it's important for us to really just address some cultural things that we don't really notice. So there's 3 inherent different types of state of mind. There's a market state of mind that we're all very, very used to in our society today, which is to sell energy projects or energy to whomever can afford it. If you can't afford to buy electricity, too bad you don't have electricity for your refrigerator or for your respirator to live. Or charity state of mind, where we can help other people by giving them free, cheaper energy. And a lot of the time, this is just rich stranger who got rich from the market state of mind to be able to give money or free, cheaper energy to the other people. And these are the 2 types of state of mind that we're very used to in the energy industry or in many different markets that we're in. And then I'd like to just introduce a common state of mind, which is something that we'll be delving into about building a line of solidarity. It's really about how we can work together so that we all have control of energy and build our collective wealth. And that's the type of work that we're trying to do, is really activate people through the line of solidarity from the back of the room to the front of the room to work together in a movement. We're an enterprise who need to be financially sustainable with that very mission. And I will dive into how exactly we do that. Our cooperative has a proven unique model that I'm about to go through with you for people in California to collectively finance and own renewable energy assets. Here's a photo of us making decisions together as owners. Currently, we have 96 different member owners throughout the whole state of California. And People Power Solar Cooperative's mission is to create a just and inclusive transition to renewable energy by enabling everyone to own and shape our energy future, by activating our communities to see energy as a tool to build community power and solve at least 2 problems. Number 1, most people cannot own solar, and 2, people's lack of understanding of energy has really stymied collective climate action. So let's just look at our pilot project, which is the project that was featured in that video we just watched. It's a small residential project on a duplex, and in here, our cooperative is a member full of cross-generation, cross-race, cross-class, cross-culture of people in this movement cooperative to try to figure out how we can actually build a real energy model that people can collectively own. And we're looking into building a lot more where people can actually collectively govern. But before we get there, I want to kind of talk about our model. We call our primary model for community solar energy the commons model because it works by putting privately owned roofs into the commons. And just a reminder, in the state of California, we do have that 50% of people cannot go solar because we don't have the policy. But when you have this this model, you no longer have to be a property owner to be able to access the financial and environmental benefit of renewable energy. And you can activate community-powered people to even make changes in your community together. So the way it works is then you have one person that buys ownership shares of the cooperative, and then the cooperative, because you own the cooperative, use your money to buy, to fund the solar installation or any energy. We don't have to limit ourselves to solar, in fact, termination, and have their own energy source that they own themselves. So we learn from our people power owners in the front line of the fossil fuel economy that when communities have control of energy, they tend to use it to address the environmental, economic, and social crises we're facing. That includes poverty, unemployment, inequality, displacement, deportation, militarization, sharp cuts in health, education, and other services. Like, these people are literally looking at energy as a resource to build wealth for themselves. So People Power Solar Cooperative is really a movement cooperative that enables anyone to realize the powerful benefit of community energy ownership. Not just individual energy ownership, but community. Under People Power, communities benefit financially as investors, socially by building a commons and community resilience, and environmentally by realizing collective climate action. So I'm sure there's a lot of questions about like how money comes in and out. So when we build an enterprise with a common state of mind, again, the STAR, these are the buckets of funding that help subsidize the true cost of regenerative enterprises like ours. It's important to recognize that for regenerative enterprises oriented towards public benefit and social impact, not all activities result in dollar for dollar return. So a mix of capital is needed to account for the non-monetary wealth enterprises like ours generate for our community. So we cannot solely rely on community member funding and have to give the money back right away. So in addition, we're also operating in a very uneven playing field with extractive businesses that externalize the true cost of their business, such as not taking care of the community that they open their office in, causing displacement, or paying them so little that they have to work 2-3 jobs to survive. So for many regenerative enterprises, it makes sense that a portion of our financing should be in the form of donation, grants, and forgivable loans, even though we're a cooperative corporation. And this is why in here, it's important that we're really advocating that it's important to donate or give grants to cooperative instead of just 501c3 organization. So if you're inspired by what you heard, here are ways that you can be in the line of solidarity with us, where you can become a community member and build projects with us, or you can work with us and be part of our technical know-hows to tap into how we can allow communities to have governance by tapping into your wealth of knowledge. You can donate to support People Power to fund our technical assistance, that we give all these information that allows them to make the best decision for themselves. Or we actually have a People Power Solidarity Fund that gives money to communities where community members are already organizing their group, their community groups, whatever group might be, but they still have to work, say 1, 2, 3 jobs to survive. But if they can actually get paid to do this work, they can actually make their community better and not have to worry about their income. So that's what the Solidarity Fund is. And if you're interested in investing safely into your neighbor's solar and putting in more money than our $1,000 cap that was briefly mentioned in the video, I'm happy to let you know when we're ready to take patient investment money. You can email me, and here's my email. In essence, the story of our collectivity and energy democracy depicts a growing kinship and unity between climate justice and the other movements of human, civil, worker, immigrant, and democratic rights. And most importantly of all, lives on Earth. It's not about decarbonizing the economy, it's about decolonizing the economy. through opportunities like People Power Solar Cooperative, communities throughout the country are actually taking back control of energy, literally, politically, and economically, to build energy democracy. It is not about fighting fuel, but about a new economic model so we can survive and prosper. It is not, basically in essence, the story of our collectivity and energy democracy depicts with all these coming together, when we can actually start to see communities already are planning and living. Communities are in the front line, are already very resilient and have the social cohesion. They already have the culture to share, and they already have the solution. What is really lacking is a resource to meet the historic challenges built on racism started back in colonization. So we need to leverage our power and privilege, moving in the line of solidarity, designing ourselves out of enterprises, and understanding our roles in this, and really to be able to create a future where all lives on Earth can thrive. And we need to start building solidarity by giving people the resource to liberate themselves, so we can all work together to knock down that fence, so we can watch the baseball together. Happy to take questions. I see there are boxes popping up.
Yeah, we have a number of questions in the chat room. I don't know if anyone wants to share some of the stuff that they sent in. I think the first person we had chat in was Wei-Tai just after the breakout sessions, sharing some of the conversation that he had with Linda. Wei-Tai, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. And it's great to see so many Suntech solar colleagues on the line here. This little reunion to support Crystal. And I must admit, it's been 10 years then most of us were together in a solar panel business. And I'd say back then, the price of solar was pretty high. So it was really the early adapters that could afford it. So it was really, and corporations, utilities, big companies. And I think we were all in there just pushing for more progress to embrace solar. But I think even at that time, I knew, poor people were not going to be able to afford solar. Poor countries were not affordable for solar. But we knew we just had to get it off the ground somewhere. The 30% tax credit was available for people who paid taxes, but for poor people who didn't pay taxes, they got no subsidy. So that's sort of unfair. But I think in the name of, driving down costs, scale and all that, we happily, push forward as what we did 10 years ago. But I think what's been clear in the last couple of years, and probably is just that, the trickle down effect, the poor people still don't have money, even though solar is a lot cheaper. And I think those of us in the industry who have been in it can really use this challenge to us and think, okay, how do we become more inclusive and get the have-nots to get some solar, some good stuff, right? And not just perpetually have, the people that have get more advantages and the have-nots continue to have no advantages. Don't know what the answer is, but I appreciate that Crystal is helping us to raise it and putting some solutions. I'm learning a whole lot of new vocabulary here about the commons and stuff like that. So I hope that, this is just the start of my own journey to try to see what we could do to get more solar into the hands of people who don't have it.
Thank you.
Sorry for being so long, but now I challenge, can I call on somebody else?
I'll go next. Mine was the next question. Hi, Crystal. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. That was great and very inspiring. I had two specific questions I put in the chat. One was, what happens when people who put panels on their houses through the cooperative sell their houses or pass away? I was just trying to understand this kind of divided ownership model, and I'm sure that you've incorporated, but I was curious. And the second thing is, like you mentioned something about 96 owner members, and I was wondering, like, is there some goal of the organization to have like a much larger number of owner members? I would imagine that at a certain point it might become unwieldy, but maybe not. So it's a little question about kind of what is the vision for how big this cooperative is going to get, or maybe it's to inspire other cooperatives like that. So that was kind of my second question. And then my third one was actually related, I didn't write it in there, but it's related to kind of this last thing, which is the call to action of like becoming a community member. And I was looking at your website kind of as I was listening to you, and it looks like there's all these different ways to become an owner or to contribute. So anyway, I'd love to hear a little more specifics on that, because if we want to get involved, whether it's in our neighborhoods or thinking about other neighborhoods, kind of how to think about that.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll answer the first question with just sharing with you this graphic here. This model is basically the power purchase agreement model that most leasing solar model is using. And the situation where the homeowners end up selling the home or pass away happens and is always part of the agreement. And we negotiate because we're a cooperative, and the homeowner ends up becoming a subscriber owner. They get to decide how they want the agreement to be drafted. And generally, we would like to make it so that this is permanently owned by the community. So then also educate the homeowner to understand that just because you're participating in the energy transition with the common state of mind doesn't mean you can participate, or you should participate. Actually doesn't mean that you cannot participate in the housing market, not in a common state of mind, and think that you can just sell your house to the highest bidder possible. I mean, I'm sure it's not that hard to find a buyer of a home who wants to buy solar that is actually building wealth in the community. And a lot of what we're doing is really in negotiation with the owner to do it in a way that educate people about the commons and educate people about how we can actually come together and build solidarity and build power together. So that goes into the next question around like our goal of growing a certain number. The way I interpret that question is about our scalability. Obviously, we would love to have as many people, like hundreds of thousands of member owners in our cooperative, but we do not measure our success based on the number of owners or number of projects. We measure our success by the very qualitative measure of how much communities are really activated to actually start being engaging and building conversation to talk about power building. And so at least that's how we've been measuring, because we know that that is the biggest nut to crack that most people are not really talking about when it comes to the barrier to energy transition. And we believe that when we can get people in a decentralized manner start to understand how energy can become a tool to build community powered people, then we can actually start to have people start to go out and talk to their own community and start to have that movement, because it is so decentralized. And I forgot the last, the owner, different type of ownership. And it was so difficult for me to shove everything into 1 hour. We have a very somewhat complicated structure, mostly complicated because it's very different from our normal way of thinking. We operate in a common state of mind. And with that, we have 4 classes of owners. And so far, I kind of mentioned general owners, who are the people who buy shares of the cooperative and become owners and get to have financial benefit of owning the system that's not on their roof. And we have subscriber owner, who gets electrical power or other benefits from the cooperative. And then we have the anchor owners. I talk about them a lot, but didn't name them. They're the people who actually provide leadership and spearhead development of these project groups. The solar system in the galaxy kind of analogy I was talking about, where all it's spearheaded by our anchor owners. They are the most powerful owners of our member owner. And there's the worker owners, that's myself and another colleague. And everything we are doing as staff and worker owner of the cooperative is to provide the resources for the other 3 member class, primarily the anchor owners who are actively driving the energy transition.
All right, we have several other questions if people want to hang on and continue discussing. Jeff Schubert posted something in the chat. I don't know if you want to chime in about that, Jeff. I also thought that he had made a great point about what he said.
Sure. So I think it's really great that Crystal is hosting this and we're all here, but I think to a large extent, we've already brought into all this. It's not us that's the problem. It's everybody else out there. But it's very difficult to get a group of people to agree to anything, except if there's an immediate threat of some kind to their safety or their well-being. But you get a group of people together, they're all going to argue and they're going to find a reason not to do things, especially if it's going to cost them money. So I tend to focus on solutions, not the problems. And I've thought a lot about this, and I really feel that the key are the utilities. It's making the utilities public and not investor owned, and provide incentives or motivation to the utilities to make it happen on a broad scale and force it. Because to work with communities is going to take forever. It's got to be the utilities that already have the relationships and they can benefit, and they need to be committed, especially if there aren't pressures to increase their earnings. So it's all economic. It all comes down to economic, and climate change is great, and people are going to benefit from that, but it's secondary. And this has been proven time and time again through all my years in the solar industry. It all comes down to money, and utilities need to lead that charge.
Well, I appreciate the comment, and I think I would like to push back a little and say that if it really comes down to money, and we human beings are in fact rational beings, that we can just look at everything based off of balance sheet, and then I don't think we'll have a lot of the issues that we're seeing today, and the transition would have happened way faster. And there's clearly a huge amount of lack of political will. And I think it's beyond just lack of education. I mean, look at the injustice that so many members of our communities, especially Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, are suffering today. It literally stemmed from slavery and colonization. And a lot of people, literally until watching the videos from the death of Ahmaud Arbery to Amy Cooper harassing a bird watcher to the death of George Floyd, when people realize that there is so much in the reality that we don't know, that people are suffering through, and without recognizing that, and blindly believing that economic would get us out there, which it has not. I mean, look at the conversation that's been going on over the past years. And I mean, we can listen to Greta Thunberg about what's really going on and why is it that economic machine can't get us out, and how we need to listen to people and actually put our civilization to be based off of life, as Jeremy Lent have said, and not about wealth building only. Because if we put priorities in money, we're going to build it on the backs of human lives, as we have done continuously for centuries, and that has not stopped even right now, today.
Yeah, I just don't feel we can combine, climate change to racism. And racism is a different issue, and it has underlying insecurities and, and also cultural values that have been instilled in these racists over many, many years and generations, where they've been taught, probably by their parents or grandparents, to hate. That's very different from climate change. And by muddying the waters, I think you're going to lose people. We've got to focus. They're two separate issues, and they both clearly relate to survival of our civilization.
I would be happy to engage more. I think this is a very deep conversation and could take a very long time, and I want to respect everyone's time. And I know that we're happy to stay an extra 30 minutes to talk about this, but But before I get in there, I would like to address Antonina's question, and then I can get back to that point, because it's a really good point, and I think that is a key point in whether we can actually get out of the climate crisis or not.
Hi, Crystal. Thank you. It's Antonina, and I really appreciate just all the thought and work, and there's a lot. It's really inspiring to see this, and just all the whole notion of the commons, I think, is something that isn't talked about enough in enough ways, and the loss of it, and how this project builds on that notion. And I think that's a topic just in general that's worth a lot of discussion. The question that I had related to that is, you talked a lot about the community and everybody's welcome, but it seems like from what I'm gathering is, at least at the start of this, to build it, you're focusing on specific communities or some parameters. So I'm interested in, what are the, what do you see as the components of the communities that you are focusing on and building on?
Yeah, thank you for
building with.
Yes, definitely. I think when we're looking at building a business or even building a nonprofit, there's a very clear question. First question is like, what is your target audience? And I respect that question, and I believe that there's really inherent importance in being able to focus. And our focus have been very intentionally being put into the fact that we do not go to the community, just like how colonizations or any move of colonization have happened even to the modern day today, of going into community using the word of, I'm going to come and help you, I'm going to come and save you, and accidentally end up extracting from the community and causing harm from the community without really understanding the existing ecology that's already happening. And so what we do is we like to say that we don't do any outreach. We don't go to the community. We have communities come to us. We do in-reach. We do a lot of activation of our own owners, and the owners get inspired, and then they start their project groups, or they start to talk to their own members of the community, and then bring us to them and say, let's talk about what we can do with this temple that I go to every week, and can we actually build wealth from this? Or Auntie Brandy actually is the anchor of the community, and she always opens her door up to feed all of us in the community. We'll love to see how we can actually use her property to actually build a lot more than just having electricity bill savings or having Black folks on roof to get jobs, or really how can we actually become a provider and not wait for companies and nonprofits to come and save us, but how can we become our own providers? So really having conversations like this, helping them understand that we have the tools and resources to allow you to meet the needs that you have been dreaming about for the liberation that you already know how to do. We don't educate people about how to do community. We don't educate people about what liberation looks like. They already know. They just don't have the resources. So we're here to do a lot of technical know-how and offer resources, including money through the People Power Solidarity Fund, so that they actually have the ability to start building wealth. And if it means more affluent communities from the Kensington or Piedmont who want to build project, that's fine. We're building the line of solidarity. There is no exclusion on where you're coming from, as long as you embrace the commons state of mind. And I am really disappointed and surprised to learn, like, as I start to work with communities in the front line of the extractive economy, that people who really understand, and too bad Jeff dropped off. Oh, Jeff dropped off. But people who really live in the front line already understand what it is to live in harmony with the earth. A lot of them might have been forced to eat McDonald's because they don't have a choice, or because they are forced to work so hard that they don't have time to put real food in their stomach. They know how to live in harmony in the world, but they don't have the resource to actually do it. And then I look at people from my world where people are glued their eyes to Netflix or sports game, and they just wanted to be in their own condo instead of actually understanding how to share. And so I really believe that, I mean, I don't even need to choose. The people who are going to understand a common state of mind have consistently been the people who live in East Oakland, East Palo Alto, East LA, and the Central Valley, who come to us and understand that this is something that I have been looking for, and we need to start building something together. So it's kind of self-selected.
That's really interesting, and I was thinking there had got to be something that pulled, you know, people in, and I think that is, I mean, I don't know if this is the right word, but it's helping to empower them. It's filling a needed, creating a link between where there isn't one, where there's maybe a breach. And it also seems to me, and maybe you can comment on this, it's getting late, I don't want to take too much time, but I think there's a notion among a lot of communities that these things get outsourced. In other words, somebody else does it. And I think the